Well, good morning and want to welcome everyone to the council meeting, especially Mayor-elect Brandon Whipple. Thanks for all of you being here. And we will jump right into today's meeting. With us this morning is Reverend David Ursuline from the Zion Lutheran Church that will provide an invocation. And following the invocation, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance, and we invite you to join us for both of those. Reverend David.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would like to just share a few brief words from the Apostle Paul. He wrote to the Romans, but I think that it has a great deal of significance for any gathering of people that have been gifted with various gifts. Paul wrote, "For by the grace given me, I say to everyone among you not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned, having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us." If you would, we bow our heads and pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we, on this day after Veterans Day, remember those who gave their ultimate sacrifice, serving in our armed forces, hundreds of thousands, and they gave their lives for the proposition that we have been endowed as a people by our Creator with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Lord, we remember those veterans who were wounded in these conflicts, whether physically, but also emotionally. We pray for them in our community and ask for support for them and encouragement and certainly respect and honor. Lord, as we gather this day in the City Council meeting, we pray for our mayor and council members. We thank you for how you have gifted them. And Lord, with your blessing, they are able to work together for the good of the citizens of Wichita. They're able to do so much. And yet, ultimately, the welfare of these citizens are in your hands, and ask your blessing upon Wichita and all of her people. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of November 5th, 2019. Any changes or corrections? Seeing none, I move that we approve those meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have looks like a proclamation and a few awards to hand out this morning. So our proclamation this morning is for the National Registered Apprenticeship Week. If Keith Lawing and his friends, Workforce Alliance, would join me. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good to have you.
Thank you. Got a bit of a group here.
Looks like you're able to round up all of your friends.
Didn't know I had this many.
Good to have you all this morning. The proclamation from the city of Wichita, Kansas, found in 1870 reads, "Whereas National Apprenticeship Week is celebrating its 5th anniversary of the raising awareness of the vital role apprenticeships provide in creating a qualified and highly skilled workforce in diverse industries in Wichita and across the nation. And whereas the advancement and well-being of the United States of America depends on the continued development of skilled workers in their chosen fields. And whereas there are more job openings than job seekers in the United States and the city of Wichita, see that expansion of apprenticeship will help bridge that skills gap to fill these jobs. And whereas the Workforce Alliance of South Central Kansas have filled 256 apprenticeship positions in 2018, and whereas Wichita recognizes that robust apprenticeship programs provide tangible value to both job creators and apprentices, with the potential to increase productivity and improve diversity and inclusion, and reduce recruitment and training costs while providing a pathway to prosperous careers for job seekers. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jeff Longwell, the mayor of the city, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim November 11th through the 17th of 2019 as National Registered Apprenticeship Week. And I will turn the podium over to whoever, but Tony, you're the featured speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the proclamation. We appreciate that. I'm Tony Naylor. I'm the training director of the Wichita Electrical Apprenticeship Program just up the street on 13th, just down the street from North High. They also have me chairing the State Apprenticeship Council of these. We currently have 144 apprentices. They go to school 20 hours a month, and the rest of the month they work earning wages and benefits. This year, our apprentices will earn a little bit over $6 million in wages. So it truly is an earn while you learn program. And Keith would like to say a few words.
Tony, appreciate it, Tony. Good morning, everybody. Keith Loyne with Workforce Alliance of South Central Kansas. Just want to thank the City Council and Mayor Longwell for their support of for this proclamation recognizing Registered Apprenticeship Week and their ongoing support for employment and training programs here, not only in the city of Wichita, but South Central Kansas. Here behind me, you see it's a group of individuals and from organizations that have really embraced apprenticeship as a training model with low unemployment rates. What an apprenticeship program can do is help somebody with the job get a better job. And as Tony said, it's an earn and learn model, not only for your traditional trades, but we have companies like Spirit Aerosystems, who's represented with me today, looking at how apprenticeship can fill manufacturing jobs. And we've got schools like Cali Community College working with companies like Tech Aerospace and others, how they can accelerate individuals into the workforce at very good wages for not just jobs, but for careers. So with that, again, very much appreciate the City Council. For anyone interested in information about apprenticeship programs, come visit the Wichita Workforce Center at 21st and Amidon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you all. Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak?
Let's go for a picture, yeah. I would love to have a picture with you. Get tight, everybody. Act like you really do like me.
So we have a couple of awards this morning for Sean Henning. If Sean would join me up here. No, Sean. You can hold this up while I speak. That'll be your workout for the month. So this first award is from the Government Finance Officers Association. The City of Wichita has received this Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from the Government Finance Officers Association for the 31st consecutive year. The budget received both the Special Capital Recognition and Special Performance Measures recognition for the third time. Wichita is one of the very few cities that have received this special recognition in both areas. That's pretty amazing. I thought we just kept secrets. The budget is reviewed based on the GFOA criteria to ensure best practices for communicating financial, operational, and policy information on budget. And don't run away because we have another one. This one's not as heavy. You should let her hold it. That's right. So this one is from the ICMA Certificate of Distinction and Performance Management. The City of Wichita was awarded this certificate of Distinction and Performance Management at the International City County Management Association Conference on October the 23rd. For the 8th consecutive year, the award recognizes programs that instill a culture of performance management, pursue comparative data analysis and data-informed decision-making, and share results with residents. So thank you both for being here. And would you like to share some?
Just very briefly.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This award would not be possible without the support and leadership of the City Council. And I'd also like to acknowledge the city manager's office, with whom their support, this award would not be possible. And finally, I have the easy job today of accepting these, but I should acknowledge Elizabeth Goltry, who actually does all the hard work that's necessary for us to receive these awards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Madam Clerk, you want to call the next item?
Lisa Finch, WPD.
I scream internally every second of every single day, and it's not ever going to stop. My son's shooting was unjustified. The deaths of both my family members were 100% avoidable. The death of my son has impacted every single family member and the lives of the limited people he chose to let in. When I talk of family, I don't mean just me and his siblings. It includes aunts, nieces, nephew, cousins, and cousins' kids. Andy was our family leader. That was purely his choice. He assured we had what we needed and was sure to take care of any issue we couldn't handle on our own. Even if he and a family member happened to not be speaking for some reason, and if Andy became aware, that family member took care of what needed to be taken care of. He and Lena both were the glue that kept this family together. My loss in particular of Andy, and also as a mother who had already lost one child, is totally inexplicable. The screaming is always about trying to understand why. My family members had to die when it was totally preventable. Andy could always be counted on to take care of anything the family needed. My health prevents me from doing quite a few things. If I asked him to do something, he got to it right away. Most of the time, I didn't even have to ask. He never complained what he did for anyone. He was loyal, understanding, loving, caring, and such a family-oriented person. I am not ashamed of my mental illness. Times when I wouldn't even get out of bed, he would come in as many times as it took to get me up and out of my room. He was my caretaker. There were 2 separate times I had ended up in the hospital for fainting. Both times I woke up to see him curled up in the chair next to my bed. I don't even know where to start on what the loss of my family members has done to my mental illness symptoms. There is not a single day that goes by I don't think of my son and granddaughter, all the while screaming inside they did not have to die. Changes and policies need to come about so this never happens to another family again. More training for WPD, a better system of communication between dispatch and those out in the field of the city. The city of Wichita and the city council members have a responsibility to make sure this never happens again to any family in this city. What, council, if this were your child and grandchild? Please, council members, do whatever is necessary to bring change so this never happens again. There is a void that is agonizing, intense, empty, so black, and there is absolutely nothing that can fill this void. There is not a single explanation I can give for you all to understand this void and what this has done to us. The eternal screaming is unbearable. I asked you to put yourselves in my place. What if this had happened to you? What do you think the effect would be on your family. Our lives have changed so significantly, there is not a single particle of our being that describes us that has not been changed. And there's no going back to our old selves. Mr. Johnson, I want to thank you for your early acknowledgement of my loss, and want to thank you for taking the time to attend and speak at my son's one-year vigil in below freezing temperature. You will never quite fathom my gratitude to you. Again, thank you. The very most important thing I have to say about any of this is the Lord has truly blessed me throughout this many times in this nightmare. If it weren't for my faith, I would not be here. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next speaker.
Alma Ann Jones, WPD.
Good morning, Council. Good morning and welcome, Mayor-elect Whipple. $32,000. It doesn't seem like an extraordinary amount of money, but to the taxpayers in our community, it means the world, and I'm here today to tell you why. Justin Rapp is suing us, the city of Wichita, for $32,000. Officer Rapp was protected and had faced zero consequences after he shot and killed an innocent man for opening the front door to his home. We as taxpayers will be paying that bill. We ask that you spend our money to vigorously fight against paying Justin Rapp anything. A recent article published in the Wichita Eagle on November 10th of 2019 confirms that Justin Rapp had previously been reported to the Early Intervention System, also known as the EIS, for adverse police interactions in 2014, 2015, 2016, and again in 2017. These reports were made on Rapp for engaging in a high number of excessive use of force incidents, with at least 6 incidents being reported within a 6-month period. All of these reports of excessive use of force incidents were prior to Andrew Finch being shot and killed in the house where he helped raise his niece and nephew and was a dedicated caregiver to his mother. There are so many questions that need to be addressed, like why after numerous use of force incidents was Rapp allowed to remain on active duty armed with an AR-15, the same weapon that was used to end Andrew Finch's life on that cold December evening. Attorney Stephen Pigg has been paid over $250,000 of our money in defense, yet nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, has been used to compensate the children of Andrew Finch. Because of the lack of training and hostage protocol, an innocent man lost his life and a community struggles to keep the faith in our system. This was desperately needed the night of December 28, 2017, and is still an urgent need today as I stand before you. It is your ethical and moral obligation to be proactive. Do what this community deserves and take action, showing accountability, and admit that we are not above reproach. Let's pay the Andrew Finch children and family for the nightmare that we have caused and give them the chance that they need to move forward without Andy. I urge you to use your credibility and show your integrity as elected city county council members of this community and prevent another senseless death, prevent another fatherless child, and prevent another mother from burying her son. Take responsibility and bring back the faith of this community by providing necessary funding for a full-time, properly trained, and dedicated SWAT team. The Finch family is suing our city for $25 million. To those of you who believe this price is too high, I ask, what if this was your father, brother, or son? What is your son's life worth? What is your daddy's life worth? End this for this family. End this for this community. And end this for the dedicated WPD officers who continue to serve and protect us. Fire Officer Justin Rapp and charge him for the murder of Andrew Finch. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, next speaker.
Bonnie Biddle, Justin Rapp.
I take it Bonnie Biddle is not in the audience. Going once, twice. We'll go on to the next speaker.
Elizabeth Talley, mistreatment of her children by St. Francis Ministries involving WPD and Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office.
Doesn't appear that Elizabeth Talley is here either. All right, Madam Clerk, we'll go on to the next item.
Consent agenda items 1 through 23.
Any items need to be pulled for discussion or clarification? Seeing none, I move that we approve consent agenda items 1 through 23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Public hearing issuance of industrial revenue bonds, IH2 LLC.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development for the record. The item before you today is a request for the issuance of industrial revenue bonds for IH2 LLC. In December of 2017, the City Council approved a new speculative industrial and flex program that requires a minimum of 100,000 square feet to be built, not divisible below 25,000 square feet, with a minimum clear height of 28 feet, and the properties would then qualify for a 5 plus 5 year tax abatement, whereby the first 5 years would be a 95% abatement, and the second 5 years would be a 50% abatement, assuming the property is 50% leased by the 5 year mark. On December 4th, 2018, the City Council approved a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds to IH2 LLC in an amount not to exceed $6 million. IH2 LLC is a partnership that is managed by Jeff Lang, a local developer. This is the second industrial building built in the Iron Horse Manufacturing and Warehousing Project. The first building was leased to Cosmic Pet. This is the location of the Iron Horse Manufacturing Development, which is located at Seneca and MacArthur. 6 total buildings are planned to be developed in this. This second one is the bottom C building on the left-hand side. So it's outlined there in red. The image on the left is the first building that was finished at Iron Horse, and the image on the right is what the new second speculative industrial building looks like today, which is ready for tenant improvements. The value of a 1-year property tax abatement, assuming that it's $6 million and that is valued at 80% of that, since we rarely see the appraiser appraise the property for a dollar-for-dollar value, would be approximately $39,200 to the city and $140,752 overall. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.37 to 1 for the city, 1.31 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 1.51 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it is the staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $6 million for IH2 LLC, and authorize the necessary signatures. Jeff Lang, who is the manager of IH2 LLC, is here and can answer any questions specific to the project, and I would be happy to stand for any questions as well.
Any questions for Tim? Seeing none, we'll go out to the audience. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Tim, real quick, just for anybody watching who may not understand, are we giving $6 million to this?
We are not. This is largely a paper transaction. They have invested $6 million into the building, and by providing proof that they have, by showing receipts to our bond counsel, we're able to issue bonds for them. But again, it is largely a paper transaction. This is not the government providing $6 million in cash to the developer. This is just a paper transaction that allows them to get the property tax abatement and a sales tax exemption on construction materials.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? We'll turn it over to the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm very excited to see that Iron Horse is still up and running, Jeff. I appreciate everything that you guys are doing out there to make improvements to South Wichita. And seeing this is a second building, and it looks like, I feel pretty confident you're gonna fill all 6 of them, so I'm very excited to see that, and I know the residents of South Wichita definitely like to see the opportunities being taken advantage of. So I want to go ahead and take staff's recommended action to close the public hearing and place on the first reading for the bond ordinance.
Second? We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public hearing and issuance of industrial revenue bonds, WAM Investments Number 6 LLC.
Again, Mayor and council members, Tim Goodpasture with the city's Office of Economic Development. The next item is also a speculative industrial building. This is for WAM Investments Number 6 LLC. I won't go through the background in terms of the spec program because we just went through that, but this would fall under those same guidelines. On May 1st of 2018, the City Council approved a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $6 million for WAM Investments. The developer has built a 102,000 square foot warehouse at 9180 East 35th Street. This is near 35th and Webb Road. WAM Investments Number 6 LLC was created in 1997 and is managed by the Michaelis family. It is one of 15 LLCs that WAM Capital Corporation has in the city of Wichita. The area outlined in blue is where the property has been located. You can see Webb Road running not quite through, halfway through the aerial. You can see Jabara Airport on the right side of the aerial and K-96 coming in along the bottom of the aerial. This is an image of the property that was built by WAM Capital Investments. This is the interior of the building. The value of the 95% abatement on 1 year, assuming again that that is estimated to be appraised at 80% of the $6 million investment, is approximately $37,000 to the city and $133,000 overall. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which shows an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.37 to 1 for the city, 1.31 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 1.51 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it's staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $6 million for WAM Investments Number 6 LLC and authorize the necessary signatures. Chris Madsen, who is with WAM Capital Investment, is here and can answer any questions specific to the project, and I would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Questions at this point? Seeing none, we'll go out to the audience. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any discussion? If not, we'll hand this over to Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. And thank you, Tim, for a clear and concise presentation. It's wonderful to see continued investment and growth in our community, especially in District 2. So I appreciate the opportunity to make a motion for this based on the fact that it exceeds the cost-benefit analysis and, again, will be an addition to our community. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing, adopt and place the bond ordinance on the first reading.
Second? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Public hearing and issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds, Project Eclipse, Spirit Aerosystems.
Again, Mayor and City Council members, Tim Goodpasture. The item before you today is a request for the issuance of bonds for Project Eclipse, which is a partnership with Spirit Aerosystems in the city and the county. Spirit Aerosystems was founded in 2005, which was formerly a division of Boeing. It is a Tier 1 manufacturer of metal and composite aerostructures that is located on Oliver between 31st Street South and 47th Street South. The area outlined in red is the Spirit campus. In April of 2018, the city, the county, and Spirit Aerosystems approved a development agreement for the construction of a new 150,000 square foot advanced technology warehouse At the time, as part of that development agreement, the parties agreed to a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $23 million, which is the request that's coming forward today. The building is jointly owned by the city, county, and Spirit. As part of this project, Spirit is committed to creating 1,000 new jobs at an average annual wage of $56,000. This is what the building looks like today. A cost-benefit analysis was conducted by the Center for Economic Development and Business Research at Wichita State University, which showed an overall ratio of benefits to costs of 1.43 to 1, 1.27 to 1 for the city's general fund, and 3.26 to 1 for the city's debt service fund. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $23 million for Project Eclipse, and authorize the necessary signatures. Adam Pogue, who is the Vice President of Manufacturing Services for Spirit Aerosystems, and Sam Sackett, who is the Senior Manager of Government Relations, are both here and can answer any questions specific to the project, and I would be happy to stand for any questions as well.
Questions for Tim? Questions for Sam Sackett? Oh, I wasn't going to be mean to you today. I'm sorry, it's difficult for me. Seeing no questions, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Please come to the podium.
Good morning, Mayor Longwell. Good morning, City Council members. I'm Adam Pogue, Spirit's Vice President for Manufacturing Services. Really, I stand before you today just to thank you for your support of Project Eclipse, everything you're doing with us. Very proud of this global digital logistics center that we're right now closing up. In fact, we put the first parts in the system this last weekend. We move more than 60,000 parts a day just across the Wichita facility to build the products that we ship out to Boeing and multiple customers. Today, it's very much a manual process and has been for a long period of time. With the advent of the new Dematic system that this team helps support, we will highly automate that process. We'll gain a lot of efficiencies, and it'll just continue to make our workforce stronger. I'm also proud to state that from an employment standpoint, we've exceeded over 13,000 employees to date at the Wichita facility, in line with the agreement, and continue to look for more and more opportunities to do that and much more. So just thank you. Excited about the times here at Spirit. Lots of challenges, but lots of opportunities. And I think we continue to do all the right things working together. Be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, and thank you for investing in our city.
Thank you, team.
Any questions? Thank you. Sam, did you want to add to that?
He's speechless.
So truly is appreciative that you are investing in Wichita. And some of you may have seen the news just this week that Wichita and Kansas is growing faster than the rest of the country in terms of our economy. And so it's nice to see that happen this past year in Wichita. And much of that's attributed to great employers like Spirit who believe in what's happening here and investing here, and we'll continue to do that. So thank you. We'll turn it over to Councilmember Clendenin.
Thank you, Mayor. Adam and Sam, thank you so much. And if you could just take back to everybody, your team at Spirit, our thanks for your commitment to our city and to the workers here and to the lives that you affect positively every day. We appreciate it more than we can even express. So that being said, I want to move that we take the staff's recommended action and that we close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of taxable industrial revenue bonds.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further jabs at Sam? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Public hearings considering a reduction in the East Bank redevelopment district and an expansion of the West Bank redevelopment district.
Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. Mark Elder with the Office of Economic Development here. The item today before you is a request to set a public hearing. So today we're just asking to set a public hearing for consideration of this item, but we will go ahead and cover some of this. The East Bank TIF was originally established in December of 12th of 1995. It has gone through some modifications over time, including 2002, 04, and 2013. But when it was established, it did set the west boundary of the district as McLean Boulevard. Since that time, we have established the East Bank TIF as well as created a project plan including the stadium that is being under construction right now. And with that site plan being complete and there's a realignment of McLean Boulevard, we see it necessary to adjust that boundary back to the east and make the riverbank the natural boundary between those two districts. This map here is to show you the existing East Bank TIF district as well as that area in red right along the riverbank there just between Waterman and Douglas that's being requested to be removed from the East Bank district in order to be included in the West Bank district. The West Bank was established in 2017 as part of the project to redevelop the stadium, including construction of the new stadium, parking facilities, the multimodal path with green space, as well as street improvements to support the development current on the West Bank. This amendment would add property between the stadium and riverbank to be included, which resolves the boundary issue of McLean Boulevard being moved, as well as allowing the city to be able to fund TIF-eligible improvements related to the stadium project that are occurring within that area. This is a map of the total proposed expanded boundary. On the East Bank, you can see the area that's being removed from the East Bank TIF district being recommended to be put in the West Bank, as well as additional property that is being considered to be into that expansion area to support additional investment in Delano. This is kind of a summary of the map that you just saw of the area north going all the way along Seneca to McLean. There's about 2 blocks just west of the stadium, as well as additional property south of Douglas along Seneca and going west along Douglas to approximately Vine. As part of a TIF establishment of a district, there are different ways to for the city to cite for establishing those districts set forth under the statute. Those can be an enterprise zone, being existing within an urban renewal area, or the city can make a finding of either blight or conservation area. This map is to show you the consideration for how this expansion be considered. The yellow is the existing district that was established in 2017. The red area is all within an enterprise zone, as well as the small green area just west of Seneca between Seneca and Dodge was within an urban renewal area. The area west of Dodge Street going to kind of Vine south of Douglas and Millwood north of Douglas is where the staff is recommending being included within a conservation area. And again, this is just a summary. Enterprise zone and urban renewal areas are defined within the statute to be able to determine that a area is ready for renewal or identified by those boundaries. Conservation area is an area that concludes more than 50% of those structures are older than 35 years, and it's an area that's not considered blighted yet, but is at risk of becoming blighted if the city does not take action to try and thwart that and make investment to encourage new investment and bring that area to life and remove, avoid being blighted. And there are, aside from the existence of those structures being over 35 years old, you would need to be citing at least 2 of those 7 items that are identified within the statute in order to consider it a conservation area. Proposed improvements within that, they stay consistent with the original project plan as well as the Delano neighborhood plan, including parking facilities, the multimodal path being allowed to expand west if there is there, street improvements as well as streetscaping. So with this, today's action would just be setting a public hearing for December 17th where the comments can be made on this discussion in the public hearing. Following that public hearing, if the city moves forward with that expansion, the city and county, the county and the school district would have 30 days to also consider that before would become accepted. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Questions at this point? Seeing none, we'll go out to the audience. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item?
My name is Christopher Parashow. I'm here representing myself, but I'm also president of Delano Neighborhood Association and treasurer for Delano United. First, I would like to thank the city manager for coming to this month's Delano United meeting and presenting a rough idea of what this was going to be. We didn't have all the details in front of us. In my conversations since then, I've been asked a lot of questions that I didn't necessarily have the answers to, and I would like to share some of those with you. I don't know if it would be easier just to read the list and let you guys answer them as I go through them or after the fact.
So here's what I would suggest. So today's action is just setting the public hearing.
I understand that.
And so if you could send your questions in, give us time to respond to them.
Some of the questions have already been sent in, yes.
They'll respond quickly, and you'll have them way before the public hearing, and that will be the best way to handle that.
Okay. Are there a couple of them at least that I can get to during my 5 minutes then?
So you can share whatever you want during your 5 minutes, but what I'm just sharing with you, Christopher, is the best way for us to respond is for you to send those in writing, and we will respond in writing and get you your answers.
Because I want to make sure that everybody who's asking me questions gets their questions answered the best as possible.
And hopefully everyone that's asking you questions, you'll be able to disseminate those answers back to them as they disseminated the questions to you.
That's the purpose.
Okay.
At least a couple of these I'd like to address in the little bit of time I have. Why does the change from the East Bank to the West Bank not include the land where the River Vista Apartments and Exploration Place are currently located? Those are West Bank properties. Why are they not being included in the West Bank TIF? How exactly are these properties at risk of becoming blighted? I mean, I've been through the area and there might be a couple of houses that are in this area, but for the most part, they're all businesses and they all seem to be well taken care of. So the question of blight is up in the air. What's the sunset date for this TIF? Will any of these funds be used to pay off debts associated with the new baseball stadium? Will any homes within the TIF be taken as eminent domain? There's a few property owners that are very concerned about that. Will any property within the TIF district be purchased from the developers with interest in the ballpark or who had prior knowledge to the proposed TIF who purchased property in 2017, 2018, and 2019? When will the new assessed values be coming out from Sedgwick County on this property in this TIF? Where is a list of the projects and their related costs, which, if I remember our conversation, that's pretty much in the revitalization plan. What proposed structures and or buildings will be public or private? Any proceeds from this TIF, will they be used to pay off any debt, bonds, or other financial obligations? That's just a cursory list of them so far. There's probably just as many that I haven't read.
So we had that exact same list of questions already sent to all of us?
There's a couple of questions that have been added since that list got sent to Councilmember Claycomb.
Yeah. So we'll make sure that staff responds to those.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And again, today's action is simply setting the hearing so that we can hold a public hearing. And so we'll turn it over to the Vice Mayor and Councilmember Claycomb.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to go ahead and take the recommended action to adopt the resolution setting the public hearing considering removal of property from the East Bank Tax Increment Financing District, East Bank, and expanding the West Bank TIF District.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Approval of the development agreement with Douglas Market Development, LLC, for the development of an educational campus.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the City Council. Scott Rigby with the City Manager's Office. We are here today coming back to you from this spring when we previously approved an MOU for this development. We want to recap that and bring forward the development for consideration. The 4 properties in consideration are the Broadway Plaza building at 105 South Broadway, the old Henry's building at 124 South Broadway, the State Office building, and the former Sutton Place. Those make up what's called the Douglas Martin Development LLC, which is the developer of this project. Just a recap of this project. The main focus of this project is the revitalization of the former State Office building into a medical education campus to provide a home for a new DO medical school. It's approximately a $25 million investment. They'll commence construction by March 1st of 2020 and obtain a certificate of occupancy by July 1st of 2022. The first class of what's being to date called Kansas Health Science Center to commence no later than August 1st of 2022. And these are the elevations that are tied to the facade improvements. This former Sutton building will be changed into student housing for the medical school for approximately 119 units for an approximately $20 million investment, commence construction by March 1st of 2020, open the facility by August 1st of 2022. The former Henry's building would become a food hall, a commercial kitchen, and a culinary school, approximately $10 million investment, commence construction of March 1st of 2020, and a C of O by July 1st of 2022. And lastly, the current Broadway Plaza building would be changed into a hotel of approximately 119 rooms. It would also remove the 2 adjacent buildings to the west to make way for expansion of that. It would be operated as a Marriott AC Hotel. It's approximately a $20 million investment that would commence construction by March 1st of next year and open no later than March 1st of 2022. Previously, action taken by the City Council is back in March of this year with facade and asbestos projects. You saw the improvements to the buildings that we just looked at those pictures. That was approved in March of 2019 and allowed work to begin and to keep project on schedule while working on the MOU. If you've driven by these buildings to date, you've seen much of the demolition continue to take place. In addition, in May of this year, we approved a memorandum of understanding, or MOU, that provided parameters that are established formally now in the development agreement that we bring forward today and sets targets for completing the negotiations. Again, the developer's commitment for this project is to invest at least $75 million, that they would create at least 324 new jobs, an average wage of $55,000 within 5 years of opening the project. It would bring a healthcare education campus to downtown, which fits into the regional growth plan that talks about healthcare being a key component, and that they would also not contest any property valuation changes for the life of the TIF. For the city's participation, as previously mentioned, the MOU is we agreed to do industrial revenue bonds for sales tax exemption for all 4 buildings for construction, and then do industrial revenue bonds for the 10-year property abatement for the Kansas Health Science Center, which is the State Office building, and the student housing building only. And they'd be required to have a standard 5- and 10-year IRB clawbacks tied to the improvements and to the job commitment that we just talked about. In addition, we'd create a pay-as-you-go CID, or Community Improvement District, for up to 2% for 22 years for the hotel and culinary buildings only. And again, as common on our other CID project, the city would retain 10% of those proceeds to assist with improvements to the surrounding areas. This is simply a map showing the TIF district plan modification that separates Project 3, which you'll see the bigger block area, into 3A and 3B. The properties that are hatched are the Kansas Health Science Center, which is the former State Office building, and the Sutton building, to make it available for the IRB. This will also allow for park enhancements to the Lewis Reflection Park and other improvements in and around the site. In addition to allow this project to move forward is parking. As previously stated in the MOU, we'd make available up to 500 parking spaces in city-owned garages and surface lots. Those locations would be the 215 South Market, 121 South Emporia, or the William Street locations. The garage leases would be for initial 5-year lease with an option for 3 5-year extensions. An initial rate would be for $25 for students and $45 for faculty administration. And that would escalate over those 5-year extensions. On the surface lot, we'd make available up to 150 spaces on the Broadway and William lot. The first couple years would be $17, the third and fourth with $20, and you see the last couple years for $22. And then we cap this surface lot at 7 years total. There's no extensions beyond that in order to future consideration for City Council if they wanted to put that site, the former Catalyst site, out onto the market. So we kept that capped at 7 years. The Market Street garage also includes access to the skywalk. If you can picture that, between the Sutton building, the Market Street garage, and the State Office building, there's the skywalk. They have a mutual option between the city and the developer to potentially purchase the Market Street garage at market value. And that option would run from July 1st of 2022 to July 1st of 2015. And that value would be based upon an appraisal by mutually agreed appraiser. And lastly, the surface lot allows, if the developer takes the majority of the surface lot, they could restripe or resurface in order to create, in their minds, a more beautiful parking spot. Again, these are the city-owned parking lots or garages. One of the last things we want to talk about is the Chester A. Lewis Reflection Park. The utilizing of the TIF to allow the potential expansion and enhancement of Lewis Reflection Park. One of the considerations is the opportunity to demolish of the developer-owned building just immediately adjacent to the park on the east side. That the city will use the TIF. Will use the TIF to finance that park acquisition and also to do enhancements at a total of $1.3 million. The park is owned by the city of Wichita, and that the TIF would be guaranteed by the developer. And the critical thing to remember is that the public process would be involved in discussing, considering any possible park improvements. That'll go through a public process similar to the NASCAR. These are simply conceptual designs. And again, the goal is from the school is to provide a north entrance off of Douglas for students to be able to gain access to the school from the Douglas frontage, so they could walk across from Douglas Street on the north into the State Office building, the new Kansas Health Science Center. And then the goal of the park really is simply to open up, probably lift up those trees and to open up to be more visible and provide a frontal area. That staircase and porte-cochere would traverse, the porte-cochere will traverse the alleyway that separates the current park and the building, and that'll be important to consider here in a second. We did do a benefit to cost analysis based on the capital investment and the number of new jobs, and you'll see the breakdown here. City of Wichita 1.72, general fund 1.3, and debt service and onward. Lastly, is recommended the City Council close the hearing, place on the first reading the ordinance authorizing the execution, the development agreement, and authorize the industrial revenue bonds, and authorize the necessary signatures. As the development agreement provides that the developer will be constructing certain public improvements, that is the porte-cochere that spans the alleyway. It's necessary to have passage of the ordinance by 2/3 vote or 5 members of the governing bodies. At this point, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for Scott? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item?
Good morning, dear Mayor and members of the council. My name is Jason Gregory with Downtown Wichita, 507 East Douglas, for the record. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in support of this project before you today on behalf of the Downtown Wichita Board of Directors. This project brings life back to multiple vacant buildings, and the proposed mixed uses work together to both activate and catalyze an entire city block in our core. The proposed DO school will be the anchor to the Kansas Health Science Center, bringing students and faculty to this block for the first time. The student housing that is proposed in the former Sutton building will also be a welcome addition and ensures that students have the opportunity to live, learn, and play in an urban environment. Furthermore, the renovation of the former Henry's building adds a food hall as an extension of the Kansas Health Science Center campus and a proposed culinary arts program that can train our future workforce in this industry and also benefit the nearby hotels. Finally, this project renovates and converts the Broadway Plaza building into a boutique hotel that adds additional room capacity for downtown. This project also takes advantage of the existing nearby parking assets that the city already has invested in, so that catalytic projects like this can be realized. Not only does this project bring further activation to Douglas Avenue, but it also strengthens and activates the William Street corridor 1 block to the south. Through this public-private partnership, we are able to see additional improvements to the public realm. For example, improvements will be made to the surrounding streets and sidewalks, improvements to the Chester I. Lewis Reflection Square Park, and a new entry and arrival off of Douglas Avenue are just a few of the many benefits that result from this project. All 5 buildings are listed on the historic register, and the exterior facades will be returned to their original context, adding to the street wall and furthering the preservation of historic properties that have the ability to be repurposed. Lastly, this project enhances the walkability of this block, and it works to further the connectivity of the surrounding area. Through the activation of the ground floors and attention to detail in the public spaces, this project meets the objectives that were set forth in Project Downtown. At our September 26th board meeting, the Downtown Wichita Board voted unanimously to support the project before you. We offer our full support and look forward to the city's continued partnership and investment in the revitalization of downtown. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Andrew Nave with the Greater Wichita Partnership, 501 East Douglas. For the record, I wanted to briefly take this opportunity to reinforce why this project is such a driver for our local, regional, and state economy. As Mr. Rigby stated, this consideration is primarily impacted by the Kansas Health Science Center, which will be a significant new healthcare engine for our region. As you all well know, our state suffers from a lack of healthcare and a lack of primary care physicians across our state. In fact, according to the United Health Foundation, Kansas ranks 31st in the United States for the number of primary care physicians per 100,000 population. And unfortunately, we have more than 24 counties in our state that are designated as frontier areas with less than 2 doctors per county. But additionally, conversely, our region benefits greatly from healthcare. Obviously, we have a number of large hospital systems and healthcare providers and education providers that drive our healthcare system forward. It's our second largest employment sector at over 25,000 employees in healthcare in this region. So this project, and specifically KHSC, will continue to fuel that important sector to our economy. And lastly, I would remind you of, as Mr. Rigby mentioned, the Regional Growth Plan. You all supported last year in 2018 the Regional Growth Plan with Sedgwick County, many of our regional partners and private sector businesses, the Regional Growth Plan, and it delineated 32 key initiatives, very specific tactics that could drive our economy forward, one of which states that continuing to expand the region's training capacity for graduate physicians. This request will primarily do that and move our economy forward. So for those reasons and many more, I would respectfully ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing no other speakers, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And any other discussion? Councilmember Fry.
Thank you. I just have a couple questions for Scott. On the surface parking lots, when does the start date for that lease begin? Is it at the completion of the last building, or is it the beginning of this?
Let me get my document. Staff just confirmed it's when the DO school actually opens up.
Okay, so it'd be seven years from the end of that is when that lease expires.
Correct.
Got it, thank you. And then on the Chester Lewis Reflection Square Park. I see that we've got TIF of 1.3 million. Is the demo of that building and the purchase of the land coming out of that 1.3?
If
Or
the city,
just the-
go ahead, sorry.
Or just the expansion of or just the purchase of the land for the park?
Mayor, Councilmember Fry, I'll answer in two portions. The city has the ability to acquire a portion of that adjacent building. Obviously, we have to come to a mutually agreeable price for that. In the event that we do, it would be eligible to be reimbursed the purchase and demolition of that into the park.
Okay.
If we don't, then the TIF is limited to that amount of the $1 million or the 1.3. But those are both guaranteed by the developer, by the TIF.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Scott, in regard to that public process for the park, could you kind of give some more details or thoughts on what that'll look like?
Mayor, Councilmember Johnson, our intention is to do something similar to the NASCAR Park. We would work with Parks Department to issue an RFP for an architect to help with the design of the park enhancements. That go through a public process. And then obviously similar to the NASCAR Park, where we had an open house or a couple of open houses to work with the public as far as certain elements. The caution that I would say is it's a much smaller budget, so enhancements are probably going to be limited to what we do, but that would be the goal, to do that open process.
Okay. Well, with that, and I've kind of said this to Suda and her team, I just want to make sure we engage various stakeholders like the Council of Elders, like Mr. McAfee, the African American Museum, because as we have students here today who may not know what that actually means in the Reflection Park, I just want to make sure as we are developing, this is an exciting development, but that park really means something. Chester Lewis is a giant, not only in Wichita, but in this country. And the Dock Sit-In helped change this country. And I just want to make sure as we have a monument, a statue there, that people recognize that. And if we're making some form of investment, that we make sure we engage some of those folks that were there. And we have members of the Dock Sit-In that are still alive here in Wichita today. But through that public process, I really want to make sure those voices are heard. And as we're building up around that park, that it becomes a little more than just the statue with the table and the kids there, and people can really learn what that really means and how it's impacted them. So I just wanted to put that out there for the public process piece.
Anything else?
I didn't know if there was any other discussion.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Yes, go ahead, Scott.
Mayor, we had one correction. My bond counsel caught me. One correction, if I can go back. On this. I'm actually just had a brain freeze. I can't remember exactly what it is. I'm going to ask my bond counsel to step up and correct me.
Make sure we get this correction in the minutes.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. Joe Norton with Gilmore and Bella City's Bond Council. The original packet that was submitted, I think you have with you two additional documents that Scott referenced, but were not included in the printed out recommendation. As he mentioned before, the consideration is to make a modification to the project area description of the Center City South TIF District. There's an ordinance in your packet that could be approved on first reading, starting that process for second reading next week. And secondly, there are signed petitions for the creation of the CID and a resolution calling the public hearing for a later date to consider that were also part of the recommendation that was originally submitted that didn't get put on the PowerPoint.
Is the date set for the public hearing?
That would be December 10th, I believe.
Okay.
There's a publication and written notice process that has to take place.
Right. All right, fair enough. Thank you for speaking on behalf of Scott. Anything to add in your defense?
It's always good to have good friends.
Well, thank you. And before I hand it off to Councilmember Johnson, I would obviously share your sentiment on, making sure that that park is enhanced in a way that honors the history there. And I know we have some folks here still living in Wichita. I'm very good friends with Arthur Glass and Kim Garcy. Arthur Glass had three sisters that sat in on that, Dockham sat in, and all of those three sisters are still living. And I think this is an opportunity to enhance and probably bring more attention to a great piece of our history in Wichita. So I see this as adding to that, not taking anything away. And so I think it's a real opportunity. I do want to thank those that are investing. I know that recently there's some that called this my pet project. I wish I had the brain power to pull together this kind of project because this is phenomenal. It's going to be great for Wichita. I'll be the first to admit this is way beyond my ability to think through a project. So I'm appreciative of those that do have the brain power to bring this together because it's going to be very, very good for Wichita. So thank you, and I see this as a plus all the way around, and I will hand this off to Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. In addition to what the mayor just said, I forgot there was a student group that held a visual art deal last year, a presentation I went to, and they had a lot of great ideas. So I will try to find that contact information and connect everyone. Other than that, this is a really exciting investment opportunity for our downtown and our city, and I'm appreciative to Suda and everyone else who's investing and making this happen. And with that, I would move that we take the staff's recommended action.
Second. We have Did you need?
Do we need to include the public hearing of the CID?
So that's not in the staff recommendation. So amend your motion to include the public hearing on the CID for December 10th.
Okay, I'd like to make that amendment to include the public hearing on December 10th.
And I'll second that amendment. I think everything else was mentioned. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further disruptions?
Just helping.
I know. Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item.
Night Fun at the Wichita Community Foundation Grant, Douglas Avenue Pilot Project.
Good morning, Mayor, council members, Mike Tan, Wichita Transit. The Night Fund, in conjunction with the Wichita Community Foundation, wishes to award the City of Wichita a $25,000 grant to assist in funding of potential pilot projects and design ideas along the downtown Douglas Avenue corridor. Our recommendation is obviously to approve acceptance of that grant and to authorize the necessary signatures. I would like to apologize for prior documentation that has mentioned that it seems to indicate we are farther along in this process than what we truly are. This is and obviously with the changes that you're seeing on Douglas, the conversations that we just had, there are many, many parts to this project and this puzzle that we want to make sure that we put together. So I apologize for that. This is only for acceptance of this grant and the possibility of that, and that is only one piece of the puzzle with regards to funding anything that may come down along the line in future project ideas. I did want to give you an overview of what has been done currently. You can see back to February of this year, there's been focus groups out, open houses. Obviously, there were some charrettes. There was something at Riverfest that was done, also at Open Streets. We've spoken to a number of the stakeholders that are down in the Douglas area to get their feedback. I would also tell you that our anticipation is that after the first of the year, there will be further open houses. I would strongly suggest that at a workshop, we present where we stand and how we stand and what future opportunities may be available as we go through the process, and then take council's guidance, and obviously would not move forward with any project, any pilot project, any demonstration without council's approval. So with that, I'll stand for any questions that you may have for me.
Questions for Mike? Seeing none, we'll go out to the audience. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? If you'll just come to the podium, state your name.
Morning, Mayor, Councilman. My name is Rick Chauffet, and I am with Bike Walk Wichita, and I'm here to support this motion. We think that granting this fund to proceed with a better block project on Douglas Avenue, we have 3 reasons to support it. The first reason is stakeholders who have studied the project have unanimously recommended it. The Better Block project is a short-term pilot that is intended as a trial of the redesign of Douglas that has been recommended by consultants engaged by the city and, as mentioned, by a group of stakeholders that include representatives of business along Douglas, some of whom were initially opposed to the project, but became convinced of its desirability after studying the issue. For more than 10 years, the city has been studying how to revitalize Douglas and the surrounding areas. It has hired numerous consultants, conducted multiple workshops, and engaged in the public in a variety of ways. Every one of these efforts is the same conclusion. The best way to make Douglas a more desirable, vibrant, and attractive location is to encourage foot traffic by making Douglas more pedestrian and bike-friendly. The proposed project is only a temporary test of that recommended design. Certainly, after all the time, public engagement, and unanimous recommendations, the least the city can do is try a temporary test of those recommendations. By testing the proposal, the city will have a chance to determine all the effects in real time and not rely on mere opinions from either side of the issue. To not permit such a test would be the height of political capitulation. The project is not likely to significantly impact traffic. The only argument cited against the project is that it will significantly slow traffic on Douglas. Based on experience in numerous cities, the consultants have very clearly concluded that this is unlikely to happen. 3-lane street configurations and other situations similar to Douglas have proven to be very capable of accommodating the volume of traffic that Douglas currently has. In any event, the purpose of the Douglas redesign is to enhance the vibrancy and economic vitality of the Douglas area, not to speed traffic as fast as possible. As noted above, all of the consultants and reports the cities engaged in have concluded that the proposed design is the best way to accomplish this. If the city is serious about improving economic vitality and vibrancy on Douglas and all of Wichita, it is clear that the Better Block project should be approved. Please approve the Better Block project to improve Wichita. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing no other speakers, we'll bring the discussion to the bench. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. One, this is some way for us to gather some data on the reconfiguration. But 2, because I've received a few emails about this, I just want to highlight that this work actually started years ago, as was talked about from the gentleman who just spoke. But last year in particular, myself and other staff and Gary met with various factions of folks who own businesses or own properties on Douglas, and later the city manager joined us, and everyone began to come to a consensus about what this street configuration would look like. So we did address concerns of business owners and property owners on Douglas, and this allows a temporary modification to gather more data and more input from those folks as well as others. So I just wanted to highlight that this is not just the city of Wichita doing something because we can or because we want to. This is a long process, and we're getting towards the end of making sure Douglas improvements happen in the best way possible for our city. That's all I have, Mayor.
Appreciate it. Any other comments? I want to make it very clear, though, that today's action isn't approving a plan going forward. Today's action is just simply the willingness to take a $25,000 contribution. So we're not endorsing anything. And saying that, I'm still not going to support this today. I think it's premature to take the $25,000 until we have a better idea of where the rest of the money's coming from and a better idea of what the plan is going forward. Not to say that that couldn't all come together at a later time. I still am hesitant, and call me a skeptic. I've lived here long enough that we've gone through numerous renditions of Douglas getting wider and narrower and wider and narrower, and now we're back to narrowing Douglas. And I just see this as another phase in the Douglas corridor of going through different enumerations of configurations of widening and narrowing Douglas. I struggle with what we're trying to achieve and turning it back to 3 lanes and encouraging more congestion along that corridor. So I'm just simply not going to support it. That's probably enough said or too much. Councilmember Tuttle.
May I ask a question of Director Tan? So I see in the green sheet that it says that it's a $25,000 grant, and to the mayor's point that it approximately $75,000 to do the pilot project, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So if we accept the $25,000 today, do we have a plan to seek the additional funds? And if we didn't get it, could we just return the funds to the Wichita Community Foundation?
Yes, most certainly the funds can be replaced and returned, I should say. And yes, that's part of probably the next step in the process. Again, the Night Fund was very kind to offer this almost prematurely from our standpoint as far as a preparation goes. But we have at least established a baseline for what we think that a potential project pilot project could look like there. So that's really where we're at. But obviously there's additional funding and there's additional experimentation and thought and public outreach that has to go on before we get to that point.
So today is just to accept the $25,000 as a catalyst to get the process started.
That's correct. And if council just deems to return that at some point in time, that also is available too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Claycomb.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to add support to what Councilmember Johnson said. While I wasn't at every one of those meetings, I was at quite a few of those meetings of public input, and I think that that's really important. I know we're only accepting the check today, but I also think that it shows support of those public meetings and the effort that the community put into this. It shows a good faith effort to take what they've said and said, okay, we're going to try some experiment and a pilot, even though we don't know what that is yet, but we will at some point. So thank you.
And I'll turn it over to either you or Councilmember Johnson.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I would move that we take the staff recommended action to approve and accept the acceptance of the grant, authorize any necessary budget adjustments, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 6-1. Madam Clerk, next item.
Amendment of the title of Chapter 5.82 and Section 5.82.010 of the Code of the City of Wichita pertaining to interference with telephone service.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council.
Wait, hold on just 1 second. We didn't get to recognize where all these students were from. What school are you from? Oh, well, thank you for being here. And who is your teacher? Oh, there you are.
She looks so young. She looks like a student.
Yeah. And she's not even running for re-election. Well, thank you all for being here. All right, I'm sorry.
They're missing the best part. I know. I am Jan Jarman with the Department of Law, and with me is Captain Allred back there with the Wichita Police Department. And I am presenting this on behalf of the Police Department today. Today, we are working on amending an ordinance that we call Interfere with Phone Service, a little outdated name, to a new ordinance called Telecommunication Harassment. The background on this is that, frankly, technology has changed, and we need to keep up with that in our ordinances. I'll tell you the impetus for this was a few months ago, a detective brought to the prosecutor's office a domestic violence case that contained some pretty threatening texts, and they were done over Facebook Messenger. And our current, and we could prove who did it. That's difficult in a phone case, but in this case, the suspect admitted that he was the one who sent them. But we were left with no crime that we could charge, even though they were threats. through Facebook Messenger. So that's why we're here today. Telephone harassment is a misdemeanor, and this won't change that. In fact, what we're seeking to do is just wiping out the city interfere with phone service and just instead replacing it with the state statute on telecommunication harassment. Oh, back there, sorry, I should have mentioned. And it will help us cover a broader range of devices such as computers and tablets, which people message over now. Unfortunately, the way our ordinance is currently written, it's only over telephone. So one thing a prosecutor has to prove is what device was actually used. And so while you may have a suspect who admits they made the call or the text or the message, you don't always know exactly what they were holding in their hand when they did it. We believe that this will expand prosecution slightly. You still have to prove who did it. It will expand prosecution slightly, but more important, it will cover more victims and will provide, it's not just a domestic violence ordinance, but I have to tell you just from my years of experience, it's most commonly used in domestic violence cases. So it will allow the prosecution of instant messenger and Facebook and Twitter and any other type of messages that occur. And as I said, that we think it's important to protecting the public to do this. It doesn't change the penalty at all. The number of cases that you'll see are few because it is difficult to prove who did them. But we do offer this as a way to protect victims, especially in the domestic violence area. So for that reason, we recommend placing this ordinance on first reading and authorizing the signatures. I stand open for question.
Any questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a technicality, does this also include apps like Snapchat and WhatsApp?
It would.
Okay.
Yeah. It takes away from being over the phone line to any device. So now it'll be more message focused instead of device focused.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you want to cover all of the different platforms?
So I'm at 33, I only know those. There might be some younger people here that know more than that, but those students might have more platforms.
Thank you. We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing no one, will bring discussion back to the bench. Any other discussion? I move that we take the staff recommended action.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Community support specialist positions.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and council members. Brent Allred, Captain with the Wichita Police Department. This morning, I am presenting information to you regarding a partnership between the Wichita Police Department and the Department of Children and Families, where we would like to add 2 community support specialist positions to our staff. We believe these 2 positions could serve the community and law enforcement in a capacity that will allow a better response to incidents involving children. For example, we respond to homes where children are present daily, where a variety of issues could be occurring in the home, which then raises some concern to the welfare of the children. By having a community support specialist available to check DCF history on the family and provide that information to the officers or supervisors that are on scene will allow us to make a better informed decisions regarding the children. These are non-commissioned positions where they will be involved in cases where there is a risk of abuse or neglect or just otherwise in need of intervention. The employees will be hired by the Wichita Police Department, City of Wichita. However, salaries, benefits, equipment, and training will be compensated by the Department of Children and Family. They will be City of Wichita employees. We will assign these 2 positions to the Field Services Division as we want these positions to be in the field available to respond to requests by the law enforcement officers when needed. We want to track all calls for service, what services are provided, any follow-up documentation with the goal in mind that this documentation, we can track how many times family required law enforcement intervention. The goal would be to provide these families with resources in a timely manner to allow the family to be just that, a family that can stay together, make the needed changes without any additional law enforcement intervention. Our recommendation is for staff to approve the interagency agreement for community support specialist position between the Department of Children and Families and the Wichita Police Department. Communication, as you know, is an important element in making sure that children are safe in our community. These positions would be able to provide easier and quicker access to DCF records, especially during evening hours when that information is most important. The only thing that I'd like to add is that this agreement will run through 2020, and then there's additional one-year additions to this agreement if so desired.
So, make sure I understand this too. So basically, we have funding for 2 years.
Yes, we got started a little late on this. That's why 2020 is the end of the first year, and then there's agreement for two more additional years.
So we have funding for 3 years from the DCF.
That's correct.
Okay. And who knows, maybe even the potential to extend that after that.
If this is a success like we hope it is, we hope this will continue for years to come. I think this is a benefit for us, the community, and the Department of Children and Families.
Very good. Councilmember Tuttle?
Thank you, Mayor. Along that exact same line, I was going to ask the question. It says for 1 year with 2 additional renewals upon mutual consent. So does that mean all we have to do is say we want the money and we're going to get the money again? What is mutual? I've never seen that language before in like a grant per se or funding.
Yeah, I think we'll sit down with them to go over what has been done over the last 6 months, 12 months to see if it's a success. And then, I think either party can step apart from this if they don't want to continue it. But DCF is the one that brought this to the table when we were talking to them about the lack of communication that we were having, especially during the evening hours when patrol officers are out there responding to residents with kids in there. We just didn't have much of a history. And we're hoping this will help that. And then if this is a success, of course, we want to continue this on for the next couple of years.
So was there an actual application with measurable objectives, or was it just so that will be the benchmark for to be able to determine if it's a successful program to continue the funding?
Yeah, once this gets approved, hopefully, then we're going to sit down with the county and the city, and because the county is going to have one of these positions also.
Good to know. And
we're going to work out how we can track this to measure the success of the program.
Thank you, and I'm going to be supportive.
Thank you. I don't think we have any other questions. We'll go out to the audience. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any additional discussion? Obviously, this potentially can be really big for the community in combating some of the issues we have to combat. And if anyone wants a better understanding, I would encourage you to come down to one of the EMCU meetings that we have, and you'll get your eyes open to a whole list of things that are going on in the community. That I have a very deep appreciation for those officers and individuals that are fighting that battle every day. I can't imagine how they can cope some days with that. So thank you, Captain, and please pass along our appreciation for all of those fighting those battles on a daily basis, and this will help us. So I would move that we take the staff recommended action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Funding for improvements to Mount Vernon, Broadway to Southeast Boulevard.
Good morning, Mayor, Council members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you this morning is a request for final construction funding for improvements to Mount Vernon from Broadway to Southeast Boulevard. This project has been in front of the council several times, first in December of 2017 for approval of design concept and initial general obligation bond funding, and then again in March of this year for an increase of the federal funding, which is just above $3.7 million, along with additional general obligation bond funding, which brings the current budget to $5,445,291. The project is ready for bidding to begin construction in 2020. We are set to bid this project on November 22nd, pending your approval of the funding today. The project you see in red here, just as a quick reminder, the scope of this project is to convert this stretch of Mount Vernon to 3 lanes, including on-street bike lanes, effectively to match what was done west of Broadway to the river. We have several projects going on in the blue area along the Mount Vernon corridor already, including improvements to the Mount Vernon Hillside intersection, as well as conversion of Mount Vernon from Oliver to Woodlawn from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. Staff recommends initiating an additional $1 million in local sales tax today for a total budget of $6,445,291. And with that, I'd ask that the council approve the revised budget, adopt the amending resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Is that the quickest you've ever given a presentation?
I'm trying. I have 2 more to go.
Councilmember Fry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gary, what are we getting for that extra $1 million that we're using LST funding for, and why wasn't it planned in the CIP instead of using LST?
All of the funding in the current CIP for arterial streets and bridges is local sales tax funding at this time.
Okay.
And so any of our projects going forward will include that funding. This is just the last piece of this that we hadn't previously gotten to ask the council for approval of, if that makes sense.
No, I get that. Again, I'm supportive of using LST funding for this because eventually Kellogg will be done and we can use these monies for this type of purpose. So, thank you.
Councilmember Claycomb?
So I just have a follow-up. Thank you, Mayor. I have a follow-up to Councilmember Fry's question. So was the LST funding allocated to something else and we're moving it?
No, this is funding that was previously in the CIP. And again, all of our what I call transportation-related projects for arterial streets and bridges going forward are LST funded.
Okay, so we aren't moving it from some other project to this. Okay.
No, I don't think we ever earmarked anything for the LST funding per se. I mean, we earmark projects in there with funding, and it's not uncommon. I mean, if you look at our CIP, it's not uncommon for us to list projects with funding to be determined in the future.
Mayor, if I can, you're correct, and actually we had originally...
You could just stop right there.
Yeah, I know. I know. Again, let's get that in the minutes. This had originally been planned to be a 2-phased project, but we've, in order to be able to capture the federal funds and not lose those, and the fact that the mayor is accurate in terms of the local sales tax not being allocated to specific projects, we're able to use this money, and that'll actually free money up in the future for other projects.
So just to be clear, did you answer the first part of my questions? What are we getting for the extra $1 million that we're spending?
The $1 million that we're requesting today just fulfills the original budget that we needed to build the project. We have not changed the scope.
So the project didn't expand, just cost?
The project did not expand, just the cost,
okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench, and I know Councilmember Clendenin, who's been fighting hard for his district often to fix up aging infrastructure, is happy to make this motion.
Well, Mayor, thank you. This project, I think, has moved 3-4 times in the CIP. It has been a moving target. It's something that is desperately needed now that it's moved so many times. I'm glad we're finally able to get to it. The public down there is excited about the safety improvements and actually making Mount Vernon a safe way to travel. Thank you, Gary, to your staff for making this possible. and I'm going to make the recommendation that the city council approve the revised budget and adopt the amending resolution.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Overestimate bid, change order limit adjustment, and funding for improvements to Harry Street Bridge at Arkansas River.
Again, Mayor and council members, Gary Jansen. The item before you this morning is an overestimate bid and funding for improvements to the Harry Street Bridge. This project is at Harry Street over the big Arkansas River. This bridge is structurally deficient, does need to be replaced. It's not in imminent danger, but as we discussed with the council before, based on our biennial bridge inspections, we have program funding into the CIP for replacement. Project is ready to go at this time. So to give you some history, back in March of 2017, the City Council first approved the design concept, or design contract. In December of that same year, approved the design concept. In September of this year, the council approved the construction funding, which included the aesthetic enhancements. And on October 25th, the project was bid for construction with all of the bids exceeding the engineer's estimate. The lowest bid, which was just around $4.1 million, exceeded the consultant engineer's estimate by approximately $225,000, or 5.5% of that estimate. These projects are pretty complex working in the river, especially related to permitting, and also the aesthetic enhancements that were approved are a little bit challenging to estimate at times. Accepting this bid will allow the project to proceed without requiring a rebid, thus eliminating a potential increase in cost and delay in beginning construction. With the second low bid, approximately $950,000 higher than the low bid, we would expect an increase in that bid if we were to delay this and try to rebid at a later time. The approved budget of $5 million was approved by the City Council on September 3rd of this year. Due to the overestimate bid, staff recommends adding $300,000 in funding, and we would like to transfer that from cost savings from the Douglas and 2nd Street bridges at Brookside. That project recently bid and realized considerable cost savings due to the fact that we combined two smaller bridges into one project. The additional funding for this project will allow payment of the budget shortfall, any staff costs, and any unexpected contract costs beyond that. With that, it's recommended the City Council approve the revised budgets, approve acceptance of the lowest bid, waive the City Council policy number 2 regarding the use of project savings to allow the transfer of savings, approve an increase in the change order limit adjustment, adopt amending resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Councilmember Clendenin or Vice Mayor, we'll let you guys arm wrestle.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And Mayor, again, another project that's desperately needed. That bridge is, boy, if you look at it from top down, it's scary looking at it. So knowing that that is a very vital project, I would move to take staff's recommended actions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and I'm scary looking at me from the top down. All right, Councilmember Fry.
I would just want to say that I appreciate the extra investment we're making to enhance this bridge. Our bridges across the Arkansas River, specifically in the downtown corridor, are unique and attractive, and having this additional investment to make the Harry Street Bridge fit with what we've already established, I think, is important for the quality of our life in our community. So I think it's important that we continue to make these investments in our infrastructure to have pleasing designs that enhance it. So,
Absolutely, well said. All right, motion and a second, cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Funding for improvements to West Street, Harry to Kellogg.
Mayor and council members, Gary Jansen, last time this morning, I promise. The item before you last item I have before you this morning is very similar to the Mount Vernon item you just heard. This is for improvements to West Street from Harry to Kellogg. Back in May of 2017, the council approved the design concept and initial funding. In December of that same year, additional funding was approved for a current total budget of $2,930,000. This project is also ready for bidding to begin construction in early 2020. The area shown in red from Harry to Kellogg is the proposed improvements that would expand West Street to 5 lanes. As you can see, the area in blue is either under design or programmed for design and construction in the CIP in the near future. This corridor was identified in the Community Investments Plan as some of the largest expected job growth in our community, and especially on the commercial side. So these improvements are necessary to accommodate commercial truck traffic in particular. Staff recommends initiating $2,570,000 in local sales tax funding at this time for construction of the project to fulfill the original estimated budget. That'll bring us to a total project budget of $5,550,000. With that, I'd ask that the council approve the revised budget, adopt the amending resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. And again, Vice Mayor, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And we've been working on this for a long time, and I'm excited to see that this is finally coming to happen. So I want to approve the revised budget and adopt the amending resolution.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Madam Clerk, next item.
Water Utility Risk and Resilience Assessment and Emergency Response Plan Professional Services Contract.
Good morning, Laura Quick, Public Works and Utilities. This item is for a contract for professional services for development of a utility risk and resilience assessment and emergency response plan, both of which are required by the America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2018. This legislation requires all drinking water systems that serve more than 3,300 people develop or update the vulnerability assessments and emergency response plans that were originally created back in 2002, which was part of the Safe Drinking Water Act. These new requirements are more comprehensive than what we had to comply with before, and we're now required to evaluate more potential threats and consequences, which include things like natural hazards, tornadoes and earthquakes, physical security, water source protection, cybersecurity, financial infrastructure such as our billing system, and more. This will require coordination with other city departments and the Sedgwick County Local Emergency Planning Committee. And our deadline to complete the first step, which is the risk and resiliency assessment, is March 31st. So the selection process on how we came to choose the recommended vendor, we had 5 proposals that were considered by a selection committee in accordance with the city's policy for professional services contracts. The recommended proposal is from ARC Consultants, LLC, which is a civil engineering and environmental planning and compliance company, with subcontractor Proteus Consulting, who will be providing additional engineering expertise. The recommendation is based on qualifications, experience, and competitive pricing with a not-to-exceed cost of $132,348. The staff recommended action is to approve the contract with ARC Consultants, any necessary budget adjustments, and authorize the necessary signatures. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
How many firms submitted?
5. We interviewed all 5.
All right. Any other questions? We'll go out to the public. Anyone like to address the council on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any further discussion? I move we take staff recommended action. Councilmember Clayco.
I just want to point out one more time that, again, investment we're making in our water system to make sure that it is safe. I know this is an infrastructure, but it is to get a plan, to assure that we have a plan for our water. And so I just want to point that out to the public in this time when we're talking about water a lot. So thank you.
You trying to say we plan?
We do plan.
We have a motion. It may die for lack of a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
taxable general obligation airport refunding bonds, and taxable water and sewer utility refunding revenue bonds.
Good morning again, Mayor, members of the City Council. Mark Manning with the Department of Finance. Today I want to present to you the results from our most recent refunding bond sale. As you know, since 2009, the city has very aggressively refunded our debt when we can, when it's within our policy parameters. Our most recent refunding was approved by the City Council on October 22nd of 2009. They authorized staff to proceed with 2 refundings, and we actually held the sale last Thursday, November 7th. And so we're here today to present those results to you and seek ratification. So we refunded, we had 2 refunding issues. One was Series 2019 A bonds for about $12.5 million. We had a very good bidder pool. We had 5 bidders. Those bonds sold with a true interest cost, or a TIC, of 2.95%, which was actually very good. These were airport bonds. I showed for a little comparison, I showed the last time that we issued airport debt was 2017. We issued GO bonds with a true interest cost of 3.62. So you can see our interest rate on these was lower than the last time we issued airport debt. As I mentioned, these bonds refunded 2 series of GO airport bonds. The maturity schedule is unchanged, and our net present value savings, in other words, the amount of money that the airport fund will save due to this refinancing, is about $1.78 million. That represents about 15.4% of the net present value. As you may be aware, our policy parameters are anything over 3%. We do. So we're obviously within our policy parameters. We also issued Series 2019 B refunding bonds. That was about $52 million worth, and these were for the water and sewer utility. Again, we had an excellent bidder pool. We had 7 bidders. We sold these with a true interest cost of 2.37. That is very low. We hit the markets at a very good time. As a little comparison there, last time we refunded water and sewer debt, we had an interest rate of 2.45. You may recall that earlier this year, we issued some water and sewer revenue bonds. Those sold at 3.10. So again, we think we got excellent results on this sale. As I mentioned, we refunded 2 series. The maturity schedule, again, was unchanged. This will generate savings for the water and sewer utilities of a little bit north of $3 million, or about 6.4%, again, within our policy parameters of anything over 3%. I'd point out that since 2009, prior to this sale, we'd saved about $60 million. This sale will result in another $5 million or so. So that will push the savings of our refunding activity since 2009 to just a shade over $65 million. So the recommended action is to ratify the award of the bids, adopt the bond ordinances and resolutions, and authorize the necessary signatures.
And just to make it clear to everyone, we can't combine the airport refunding and the water and sewer. They're 2 separate bonds.
Yes, sir.
Do we take advantage, though, by doing it at the same time? Is there any advantage, even though they're separate bonds and paid from separate revenue sources?
Yes, it's typically easier to issue debt at one time. Save staff time, just is easier way
So
to
it
do it.
saves staff time, but doesn't really combine any bond savings, so to speak.
Yep.
All right. Anyone like to address the council on this exciting agenda item? I know, it's only $5 million. Not a lot of savings.
Help start 2020 off right.
Well, all right, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Any other discussion? I move that we take the staff recommendation.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
CON 2019-34, conditional use amendment to CON 2004-30 to expand area for vehicle sales on property zoned limited commercial generally located on the east side of South Broadway Avenue and within 1/4 mile south of East Harry, 1728 South Broadway.
Dale Miller, planning staff.
So Dale, before you get into this one, I think we have a recommendation from council if it's allowed to go ahead and defer this, or do we need to hear it?
Well, I mean, certainly it's up to the council if they want to defer action.
They're not quite ready to take action. I'll let the council member speak for himself.
Dale, I apologize, but I want to defer this till the December 3rd meeting, if possible. Okay. I want to give council a chance to be able to take a look at this and study it themselves before we take action on it.
Okay.
Do you want to hear the presentation, or we?
I don't want to. There's no need.
All right. Thank you. That was wonderfully done, Dale. So we need a motion to defer.
Mayor, I apologize. I would like to move that we defer this item until December 3rd.
Second. We have a motion and a second to defer this. Councilmember Tuttle?
So, Councilmember Clendenin, we're going to get more information or more updates, or what will be provided between now and December 3rd to help with the decision-making process?
So this was on consent, and I know everybody, and I had it pulled to the regular agenda because I want the community to have a chance to look at it further. We have a neighborhood overlay plan that's in place that was overlooked, and I feel like the neighborhood needs to be heard on this.
I would encourage you to visit with council members individually.
I will.
Is that fair enough?
Yeah, that's great. I happened to be at the MAPC meeting when this happened and learned of the plan, so I think it would be helpful if everybody could see that as well.
Well, in light of this same neighborhood adopting a new neighborhood plan, or it coming to us and us potentially adopting a new neighborhood plan in the future, this is just a great opportunity for us as a council to get to know that plan and understand the intricacies of it.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second to defer. Are we ready to vote on that motion? Silence is bliss. Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, next item.
Approval of travel for Councilmember James Clendenin to attend NLC November 19th through 23rd, 2019, San Antonio, Texas.
Move that we approve that travel. Go ahead and make it round trip this time.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Cast your vote. Madam Clerk, next item. Motion passes unanimously.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
I do have some appointments today, and I shared some of those with you before we get into comments. Do you have appointments first? Okay, why don't you want to go ahead and make your appointment?
Sure. I'm going to be replacing Christopher Parisio with the Bike and Ped Board with Eric Mabey.
Okay. And any other appointments? Yeah. And then let me share with you, and I gave you all a list of these. We expanded the plumbing board a few months ago. And so these are the appointments that came out of that expansion, and I gave you the list of what the county's planning on doing and what we're doing. And so we have on our board, and this will move the plumbing board to 9 total members because you'll see one name on there as a joint appointment. So first is Master Lawn Sprinkler Curtis Uncle, Irrigation by Design. Second, Master Plumber under the industrial category, John Clark. He's with the Local 441. And then Master Plumber Plumbing Systems is Kirk Stoddard with the Cruise Corporation. Mechanical contractor Ray Frederick, formerly with Frederick Plumbing, Heating and Air. And then the at-large position is Larry Dowdery, who is with the TAP. And he would be the public at-large position that will be the joint appointment from both city and county. So I move that we approve all of the appointees as mentioned this morning.
Second.
Yeah. Any other questions on that? Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. And then just one more to mention, this is not a need of ratification, but want to acknowledge that Bill Longnecker will be on the Community Services Block Grants Review Committee. So just an acknowledgement of that. So we'll go to comments. Councilmember Clendenin.
Mayor, I just wanted to mention thank you for approving the travel to National League of Cities. I'm going, just so you guys know, to accept, for sure, accept one award on behalf of our IT and Communications Department, a national award that they are receiving. I'll have more information on that, and also the potential for another one that we're waiting to see if they receive. They're part of a top 10 slate of cities that are getting another award for their work and what we're doing in the city. So I just wanted to let you be aware of that.
Very good. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. This is more of a comment request. Bob, if possible, at the end of the year, we always do these kind of the IRB follow-up for the 5-year check-ins. And is there a way we could kind of do a report like we do at the Board of Bids that shows which IRBs are kind of current, when they end, what that impact's going to be to the city, just as a year-end deal, so people can see the initial, I guess, taxable benefit versus the end of it and the improvements being made?
We can bring back a summary report. When we don't track it on an annual basis, we do at the end of the 5-year period, and we bring those back to the council for your approval of the second 5 years. But we can summarize what's in the pipeline and what's coming forward, if that'll help.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that'd be good.
Any other comments? I move that we adjourn today's council meeting.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any additions from Councilmember Tuttle on if we should adjourn?
I think we should adjourn.
Okay, just checking. Cast your vote. Motion passes unanimously. We're adjourned.
Chicken scratch.